Finland and Sweden have long debated joining NATO, but due to a number of factors, including their proximity to Russia, they've not done so, at least not so far. However, Moscow's invasion of Ukraine has changed the debate in both countries. It seems the question may no longer be if they will apply for membership in the military alliance, but rather when. So here to talk more about this, about the potential shift, is Elizabeth Braw. She's a senior fellow from the American Enterprise Institute, which is a public policy think tank. Thank you so much for joining us. So, shortly after the war in Ukraine began, there was this talk of, maybe Ukraine can follow the Finland model, where they remain neutral, whatever that means, and Russia would leave them alone in the future. But, Russia promised to do that before, and it didn't really keep the promise. Now, though, the Finland model looks a lot different. Finland, they're having a different conversation. Explain why Finland and Sweden had been initially hesitant to join NATO in the past, and how public opinion about membership in both the countries has shifted in light of the conflict.
Yeah, it is the ultimate irony, is it not, that just when people started talking about a Finland option for Ukraine, Finland decides on a completely different option. That seems to be the case, as you mentioned, that Finland now will decide to apply for NATO membership. But until now, it, together with Sweden, they have together been quite firm in wanting to remain outside NATO. And for Finland during the Cold War, it wasn't really a choice. It was a choice. It was a position forced upon it by the Soviet Union. For Sweden, it was a choice. It saw itself as somehow unique in the world. It would give Sweden a fantastic position from which to negotiate between countries, to be the go-between, and that was it served Sweden well, and I think possibly it served the world well. And Sweden continued that policy even after the end of the Cold War, and was joined by Finland, which likewise opted to remain outside NATO. And now, in a really radical development, we are seeing both countries re-examine that position, and seemingly coming to the conclusion that now would be a good time, now would be a good idea and a good time to join NATO.
So both countries held this sort of joint press conference announcing their intention, but they're two different countries in two different places. Finland says it's going to apply for NATO membership as early as next week. Sweden could follow soon afterwards. I don't know if, soon afterwards. But can we talk about kind of the different places that these two countries are? Finland is physically much closer to Russia, and sort of the internal politics and support for NATO in the two different countries.
Yes, and this is one of the really surprising and absolutely radical changes taking place. So Finland the Finnish public has for decades been far more reluctant to join NATO than the Swedish public has. So in Finland, support has remained in the low. Support for NATO membership has always been in the low, possibly mid-20s, whereas in Sweden has been in the 30s, sometimes in the 40s. And after Russia invaded Ukraine, NATO support in Finland shot up to 68%, and it increased in Sweden as well, but less. So what's happening is that now Finland, which always looked like the country of the two, the one that was less likely to be interested and serious about applying for NATO membership, now it is essentially pulling Sweden along on this path, because it has signaled quite clearly that it wants to apply, and Sweden is saying, well, if you apply, then we better apply too, because we can't be by ourselves outside NATO.
So the U.S. and German officials rather have said they support Sweden and Finland's membership in NATO. But there's always the question of provocation, right? Is this going to provoke Moscow? So how has Moscow reacted? And what about other members of NATO? Are they in favor of these two countries joining?
Moscow was always going to be feel provoked, and it was always going to react if the two applied for NATO membership. And that's why over the years we have seen various Russian officials, all the way up to Vladimir Putin, say that, oh, if you apply for NATO membership, there will be consequences. But now, and this is what makes this moment so unique, now Russia is, as everybody can see, bogged down in Ukraine. It's not in a position to conduct any sort of major military aggression against Sweden or Finland. So now is essentially a good moment for them to join, because Russia is tied up elsewhere. And also, with regards to other NATO member states, or existing NATO member states, the membership applications that we're likely to see will be received very favorably, because existing NATO member states know that both countries, especially Finland, come with enormous capabilities, including the capability to defend a long land border. And of course, Sweden has a fantastic navy in the Baltic Sea, which is a body of water where there aren't really very many strong NATO navies. And of course, it has the island of Gotland, which would be a very strategic asset for NATO.
Oh, that's really interesting. Elizabeth Broth, thank you very much.
Thank you.